Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry that it's a bit dark here out in the woods in the Catskills. I can't seem to get the light any better, so that's fine. My compatriot in crime here is Magnus on my left. I'm based in the UK, not in Sweden, although I have been ahead in Sweden. So I'm just going to share a PowerPoint. Just a word of warning that, well, not warning, for information, that there are two video clips embedded within the PowerPoint. We've had a frenetic way of trying to make them work, but I can do without the stress. So I'm just leaving them in the PowerPoint, which you will all receive, and you will all be able to see these two short clips at a later time. So apologies for that, the technology has defeated me. Okay, so I'm going to share the PowerPoint, and we're going to stop at one or two places, and Marcy will pick up questions as well as we go along. So here's the PowerPoint. Okay, so one of the things that's always interesting for me when I come to the US is that we do speak the same language, but you use different words for myself. And so executive functioning is something that I've only really come to understand as a phrase when working with David Penberg. But people confuse them, I think, and I think it's probably important through this PowerPoint that we actually define it so we know what we're talking about. So agency I'll come to a little later, but it is a real buzzword in Europe at the moment about young people taking agency, and we sort of sometimes mix it up with the word ownership. Ownership is just a part of ownership, agency. But basically it's about young people taking responsibility for their learning rather than being directed for learning. Many of us in many countries are under a significant amount of pressure by the system to achieve in outcomes that they measure. And that often leads to schools being much more directive with their teaching than is absolutely necessary. But I do just want to state that there is nothing in what I'm about to say to you which denies the fact that really effective instructional practice is a key part of good learning. It's just that the young people also need to take ownership of that. And executive functioning is really about the techniques and ways in which those young people can take that agency and commit to planning their time. It's more about planning than taking ownership. But I think we'll see that as we go through the PowerPoint, which is now frozen. Aha. So as we said, we've both been heads in Sweden. Actually, it's 35 years since that I've been a school leader, and I'm taking up a new post as Associate Professor at the University of Bolton while still managing the education networks for Kunskapsskolan in the UK and US, so very excited by that. I'll let Magnus introduce himself.
This is I. As you said, Marcy, before, I've been a head teacher for 15 years, working in different schools. 7 years ago, I decided to leave my then present school for Kunskapsskolan because I realized that Kunskapsskolan had a concept which I had looked for my whole career. And after that, I continued to work in two places in Sweden. And now I'm trying to connect to David Penberg. We have another school down in Cornwall in England, and we're trying to exchange ideas about good leadership and good teaching and good learning.
So we've come from different backgrounds, there is, however, one common thing that we believe in. I noticed on the chat line that David Penberg asked, is this a framework or is this a sort of, or is it prescriptive? Well, actually, if you are in Sweden, where there are 38 Kunskapsskolan schools, then it is quite prescriptive. You know, they have a system and a model, and they all operate that particular model, and that's where it starts. But when you move out of that, when you move away from that country, and you move away to different parts of countries and different systems, you have to take the concept. You have to check the context. So for me, what we're about to talk to you about is a philosophy. It's a philosophy of how we can get better outcomes for young people, both personal and academic. And so we try and put this down in terms of a vision and our values. And so all the schools will, around the world, and we have 120 schools now, operate similar things, but in their own particular way. But we all share these values as the underpinning basis to our work. And I've just highlighted some of the words which are really, really important to us. Ours is a very inclusive system. We believe that what we do is for every student. Some people say to us that actually you have to be a particular type of student to work in a Kunskapsskolan and be successful. You have to have that desire to take ownership and responsibility. The reality is that what we try to do is make sure that when those students leave, they are taking that responsibility. Because for some young people, it takes the whole of their school career to get to a point where they can take agency and ownership. It's not something that naturally occurs for every individual student. Interestingly enough, a lot of primary students have a great deal more agency than we take out of them in secondary school. But we are very, very inclusive. We don't believe in multiple intelligences. We don't believe in one type of child being, we believe that we want to personalize this model so this child can actually find their way to that better learning. So behind all of this is also the ethic of excellence. So at the end of the day, we want our students to take responsibility, but if they don't take that responsibility, then we have to step in as the adult in the room to make these happen until they can. So there's nothing permissive about what we do. It's trying to all the time give them that power. So it's empowering them, and we want them to master. So the word master is really important to us. We want them to demonstrate to us that they have mastered the learning that we have instructed them in and they have worked at. But we are also, and this is part of our presentation today, want them to recognize that they're in a world very different from the ones that you and I learned in. So these are our 4 values. So all people are different. So why then do we insist on keeping them all together in the year they were manufactured? Some of you will have had your own children or grandchildren like mine, and sometimes they've been pretty bored waiting for other people to come along just because they're in that year, and that's the scope and sequence of learning. So we want to recognize people are different, that they learn in different ways and learn in different styles. And giving a teenager that agency is very intrinsically empowering. This is the point about, we want them to have clear requirements, and the most important word we use is goal. We want all young people to have an ultimate goal of what they want to do and know what they can do in every day of their school life to meet those particular goals. There is a Swedish word called bildning, and bildning means deeper learning. You will know that our young people through the media are faced with very, very simplistic answers to the world's problems, often politically inspired. And we want them to understand that the answers to the big problems in the world and life are formed of lots of disciplines, and it needs looking at different views to make that happen. So our job is to actually to make them a more educated person. And this is the big one for us, that life is what you make. We want them to realize that we're going to be asking them questions which will help them move to those particular goals. So we operate, as I said, in a number of different countries. So on the top right, we have Kunskapsskolan in India. So we have 5 schools in India. At the bottom down, we have Great Oaks Charter School in New York, where we have just started working. In the middle, we have Kunskapsskolan in Sweden. Bottom left, we have some students in Jeddah, and top left in the Netherlands. So we have 7, because South Africa as well, we have 7 different locations around the world. And we are all different. Let me give you an example. Let us give you an example. So for instance, our assessment system in the UK has moved to a situation where students at 16 sit 29 3-hour examinations. They are the only way that they get a grade. There is no teacher assessment whatsoever. Whereas in Sweden,
we have a different type of a system, which is also controlled by the government, but we always use the formative way of assessing children all the time, because there are so many different kinds of situations where you actually can prove that what you have learned, and the teacher will be able to guide you by assessing you. I think that's what you meant.
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly what we would like to be the situation in the UK, and it's probably very much in your independent school sector, something you aspire to, rather than in charter schools. But that's not our system, so we therefore have to contextualize our learning journeys and resources to match the system we're in, while keeping a strong hold on that pedagogy. Similarly, our schools are different types. So the school in India is private. Jeddah is a private school. In Kunskapsskolan, Magnus there?
We call them independent schools, free schools. So we have the same money as everyone else. So you get a certain amount per pupil, and you don't have to pay. And that's important. That it's free of charge to go to Swedish Kunskapsskolan.
And Kunskapsskolan is an offshoot of a very high-powered international PR company. It's their social enterprise, but their status is that they are a for-profit company. So in the US and in the Netherlands and in the UK, we cannot run the schools as a for-profit company. So all our schools are just ordinary schools that have been inspired by what we do and make their own journey towards greater agency. This is the first video, which you're not going to see, but I was working with our schools in India the other day, and I was told that it was the most rural part of India, and to expect that they didn't have internet, they didn't have wireless, actually they would struggle with their English. The reality was those young people were amazing at their English, and they said they dumbed their lives down when they came to school, because they did have internet access and they did have devices to be able to learn in different sorts of places. But the world of work is a very, very different place and requires very, very different skills to the ones that we expect, and it changes very, very rapidly. But actually schools haven't changed much at all. Most schools look exactly the same as the school I went to 60 years ago. And there's lots of people out there talking to us about what those skills should be and how we should encourage the growth of those. And this is just an example of the sorts of executive functioning that we want our young people to be able to build into their work. I don't want us to think that this is something that is solely the preserve of Kunskapsskolan. So I keep taking people back to the question why. Many of you will know Simon Sinek's work, and always start with the why. The OECD, which are the organization that's responsible for the PISA rankings, and Andreas Schleicher, who is the chief executive, has run a project over the last few years called the Learning Framework 2030. And they did a lot of work talking to industry and business and schools and parents and children to talk about what are the things that is so important that we must do in schools. And interestingly, and quite a surprise to me, what came out of that was the most important thing we can do for our young people is to give them agency. And this slide is really about trying to explain to people that it is not just ownership. So if I just emphasize a little bit in here, student agency implies a sense of responsibility as students participate in society and aim to influence people, events, and circumstances for the better. Agency requires the ability to frame a guiding purpose and identity actions to achieve a goal. It is about acting rather than just being acted upon, shaping rather than being shaped, and making responsible decisions and choices rather than accepting those determined by it and others. So that could sound a bit like trying to turn our young people into activists, but actually it's not. What it's doing is saying that in the way that you work, you will develop in this school the ability to organize things and make decisions about your learning, how you best learn, and how you put the whole package together. So it's actually building those skills in the way we're working, as well as finding authentic issues and topics that will inspire our young people to take those things forward. So you could imagine that student voice is a critical part of this. The second part of the OECD learning framework talks about co-agency and getting young people to remember that actually working together in groups, solving problems together is a really, really important aspect of being successful. You go to any industry or any company nowadays, and they want young people to be curious, they want young people to be creative and innovative, and they want them to take charge of their futures and their lives. And just the last slide really going into, back to the OECD report, they've identified that there are these 3 transformative competencies that we need to build in young people to help them shape the future, where they create new value, balance contradictory or seeming incompatible logics and demands, and take responsibility for their actions. This diagram explains how we do that. So we're now going to shift over to looking into a bit more detail about how that works. And the bits down the side, many of you will be very, very aware of the work by John Hattie. And these are the 3 things that John Hattie has said pulls together all his thinking. That young people need to have transparent goals. They need to know what's going to happen in their teaching to be able to take that responsibility. I don't know about you, but for me, every day in school was a mystery. I never knew what was coming next. I just knew I would be set some work, I would do it, and then something else happened. And it's impossible for young people to have agency and control without that. Also, children generally, I've been talking to some students today, and they don't really know what good means. So they are set tasks, they complete tasks, but they don't have any reference point for how that piece of work could be made better or stronger, other than the mark or grade that they get. And that's achieved by ensuring we get rapid formative feedback. We do too much marking in schools, and marking's great, but it doesn't give us quick feedback. We have to find ways in which our young people can get that feedback so they can move forward to that special work. So the diagram on the left, which I'm not going to say a lot about because Magnus is going to take this forward, sums up. You'll see what I meant about goals, that we want our student at the center to be setting ultimate personal goals that they can then develop personal strategies to try and achieve. And the rest around the outside is the synthesis of what we try and do to enable those things to happen. So Magnus, as we said earlier, runs a school in the south of Sweden, and he's just going to take you through what it is to run Kunskapsskolan in Swedish schools like himself.
And as we have talked about this before, looking at the individual, and this is very important to us, to find the pupil, where pupil is, and help them develop from that. So we always try to bring out the best in every pupil by finding them where they are. We also try to have safety and study focus for better learning. You know, an organized school where everyone knows where they're going and where they're not supposed to be, and everything is sound and safe. Then we get children to learn more and to focus more on actually finding their own goals and moving on with education. That's what we do. This is a typical Kunskapsskolan view. We have facilities with many open areas, a lot of glass so no one can hide, and we try to keep it that way as much as possible. And all the children and the students, they understand and learn from this.
And so just to add,
yeah.
The important thing as well is that the teachers are out there with the students all of the time in these spaces.
Yes, because we have the values that the more you can meet your pupils every day, the more you learn from them, the more you can help them, and the better results And all the teachers are aware of this when they apply for a job at Kunskapsskolan, that they have to be with the children every day, all day. In combination with this is the study-focused environment I talked about. The timetable is visible for everyone, and it's almost individual. So every pupil knows where he or she is going to be. And it's easier because everyone else will know what they are supposed to be as well. So you can't actually run away from things as I said before. So then we have rules for order, as I said, and every situation or every teaching practice is teacher-led, because it's really important that there are always teachers close by, so you can ask questions and you get help, and you can, as I said before, even get assessed, so you can move on and get feedback straight away. And this is what we try to do: develop profound and broad knowledge. John mentioned the word, Swedish word, bilda before. It's really important to know a lot of things. You don't always have to do it in detail, but if you have a broad knowledge, it will help you move on in life. Would you want to add something here?
Yeah. So all of you will know that the jury is out on project-based learning. People have quite profound positive or negative views about project-based learning. A lot of the work that we do has that sort of project element, but as Magnus was saying, you can't solve a project unless you have the knowledge. So we're not running away. Where I think project-based learning sometimes doesn't work is where the children get so focused on the project that they don't retain and
understand the learning. Yeah. Yes. So the teaching is supposed to be varied. You have different types of situations. Different pupil needs different ways of teaching. And in order to have that, we try to have competent teachers as well, with broad knowledge and high quality background. We also have a study material which is varied. It's a portal, you can call it that. So everything that you're supposed to learn at Kunskapsskolan, you can find at our knowledge portal.
And our knowledge portals, because it's different in every country, it's not a computer-based learning. Ours is a blended, goal-driven learning model. And the learning portal provides the visible curriculum and the visible scaffold for young people to know what choices and what they can do wherever they are.
And it's much easier for the teachers to actually teach, because everything is prepared for them. They get help from the portal. And if they are not satisfied with that, they can also develop certain portals areas themselves, which is also good. And we have a central pedagogic department up in Stockholm, which helps us all. We have networks for teachers where they can exchange experience and you learn from each other. And we also have surveys and merit and analysis every year, in order to measure how the staff thinks about how we are doing, how the pupils think, and the parents. And it's a kind of transparent way of learning more how we can develop Kunskapsskolan.
And you can't see Magnus's blushes when I tell you that they've just done the staff survey, and Magnus's school is by far the strongest school in terms of staff support.
And that's what we talked about, relational leadership. It's important as well as a head teacher, being there, helping your teachers actually doing what they're supposed to do, but how they can develop even further. So that's what I try to do as a teacher, head teacher. And we do think our methods get results. You just mentioned the latest survey, but here you can see this is answers that have answered 4 or 5 on a 5-grade scale. And 78% of the boys and girls said, I like my school. And 80% said my school have competent teachers. And 83%, the most important part, that they feel safe at my school. And they feel that they can learn things in a good and open environment. Merits, this is out of 340 maximum points. you have 17 subjects that you can get 20 points per subject. So our average was 251 last year. The municipality had 233, and in Sweden was 224 in average. So we do think this is one way of measuring how good our pupils are, but you can also do it in many other ways. And that's what we try with the pedagogics here. And this is, I'm dividing it into the whole system is based on steps and courses. All steps are language courses, language like Spanish, French, German, English, Swedish, and mathematics. And all the other subjects are courses. We divide them into base groups of 20 pupils in a small class. And they have different types of lessons, as I said before, depending on the content. So you can have what we call a workshop, you can have a seminar, and you can have a communication pass. And all this is helped out by the digital portal, Kunskapsskolan, as we talked about before. And every pupil has a coach which will help you set your goals, reasonable and challenging, of course. But you talk with your coach every week for 15 minutes at least. And then you evaluate what you have been doing, where you're going, where your goals are. So it's different from just having a teacher. You have a personal coach. It might be your teacher in any subject, but he will be there for you, helping you out. And set your goals and strategies on your own individual timetable. We start teaching in year 4 and 5. That means our pupils are 10 and 11. In Sweden, you start school at the age of 7 in the first grade. So we do a lot of teaching in the same group because they come from other schools where they have had traditional teaching. So we try to help them and set them in an easier way, so they learn a lot about how Kunskapsskolan works before they go all in and do Kunskapsskolan's way of teaching. So we have more textbooks. We don't have everything on the digital portal. We find that it's more secure. They have their own logbook, they write and they set goals. And it's good for them to work in an analog way as well.
Our schools in India start with pre-K all the way through. So although in Sweden it's for upwards, it's all the way through in our other settings.
Yes. We talked about future skills before, and these are the 6 future skills Kunskapsskolan in Sweden decided to pick out. Because, as we said, we don't know what the future looks like. And of course, you need broad and profound knowledge, but you also need skills, as John talked about before. And these are the ones we have decided. So we work with them every term. You put out, you set out skills as well. You have goals, and then you have skills. And these are the ones: learn to learn, knowing how you learn, so you can actually develop your own strategies when it comes to learning. We find it very important with the individual, but also very important to be able to cooperate with other people. And as we are here, we like to act globally because the world is shrinking and everyone is closer. And then you need to learn how to act globally. Taking action. We have our Greta who's taking action. She has been very helpful in the process, even at Kunskapsskolan. Be innovative, learn new things, invent new things, and of course, live digitally. And these are, as I said before, evaluate and develop during the school year. You set skills, goals for your skills, and then you evaluate them after every term.
Okay, so I just wanted to try and pull all those together. That was Magnus's snapshot of Trelleborg. So we would expect all our students to set up ultimate personal goals. We would like them to say, I would like to be a radiographer. I would like to be a photographer. I would like to be a baseball player. I would like to be a surgeon, as early as we can. we know that they're going to keep an open mind and they will change their mind along the way. We want them then to identify what that means in academic terms. This gives the most important way in which you can direct the coaching. I would like to say that teachers generally make good coaches, but we were so used to being in an instructional mode, we tend to give our advice, and I know you have advisories, we tend to give advice rather than get the young people to make the decision. So every week, as Magnus says, the student works with their coach for 15 minutes. It's shocking in a way that Hattie did a survey of the average amount of time a child has a one-to-one conversation with an adult in the school, and it works out as 2 minutes. They often talk to them in groups, but very rarely do they get, so 15 minutes. We've struggled in the UK and in the US to find all of the time to be able to achieve that. So we sometimes get around that with having 1 week of group coaching and then 1 week of personal coaching. But the personal coaching is absolutely critical. That person is someone who not just helps them make the right decisions about their learning, but is an advocate for that student and always will believe that that student can achieve. That's the strongest factor that can lead to improved performance. So we work really hard on the quality of our coaching and people understanding what coaching is. And as Magnus says, we expect our teachers to be out and around all of the time with those 4 different roles. You mentioned the learning portal at the bottom, and you've seen the spaces and as well that we operate in Kunskapsskolan. You know, many of our schools in England are just ordinary schools, and we have to work quite hard to get them to be configured and used in a way that moves towards this particular objective. And with steps and themes, so if you take maths, which is a stepped subject, there would be 5 steps. There's a scope and sequence going through the whole lot. Those 5 steps become a block. Each of the 4 early steps are formative. We're giving feedback to the student. We're not allowing them to move on until they've mastered that. And then at the end, the 5th step is a project step, which looks back over that and gives us another way of measuring a more summative view. They have retained the knowledge that they've mastered through those individual steps. But you can start to see that the coaching and the workshops and the way we work is all about getting the young people to take responsibility. And this then comes back to our ultimate goal. So if I'm not working at the quality I need to achieve that goal, the coach can have the conversation. So have you decided you don't want to be a surgeon now? Oh no, I still want to be a surgeon. Well, we can't leave this. We have to do something about this. Okay, let's come up with a new plan. So it's all of those elements which together, you can do coaching, you can have per learning portals, but if it's a system that is integrated to support the whole process. I'm going to move quite quickly now just to give you a little more meat on this diagram and then leave some room for questions. So first of all, how do we do that? So this is a part of a theme course, and this is art contributing to a big theme that's called Who Has the Power? For every learning goal that they have to master, there is a task that they have to do to show. It's not homework, but it might be done at home. It might be done in school in a workshop situation. But for every learning goal, they have to do a piece of work which shows they have mastered it. And they know what mastering means. So if they're wanting the top grade at the end of their school goal for their ultimate ambition, they, at every stage through the school, need to be working at a platinum level. That's telling the student that I'm going for a top grade and I need to work at this level through the whole of my school career to be able to make that happen. So we're making the short-term goals, visible and transparent. So there's the ultimate goal, there's then the learning goal, and then these are then the working goals and success criteria. I'm not going to the detail of this because this is a UK thing, but basically, you know, these green steps on the right-hand side of the yellow step is what expected progress should be as a student moves through their career, year 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Okay. And so if a student moved up through those levels, eventually, if the green one, they'd get to a grade C or a 5. Okay. That's what everyone would expect them to be, but we want them to be on this red line. We want them to be able to set themselves high ambition and to move through here and to know all the way along what success criteria will give them. Magnus talked about the different types of sessions. You can't do all of this if you don't create time and space for teachers to be able to work one-to-one. So there are times where you and I would both recognize the sort of lessons that there are. People ask me, what's the average group size? Well, actually, sometimes we need a really inspiring start for a whole year group. So there might be 100 students in an arena for a big kickoff event. Or there might be a very small communication session. So you organize that around the needs. But then there are these where the student takes charge. And there should be a time for every subject, ideally every week, where they can make a decision. I need to go and get more help in maths. And I need to go to a workshop where I can have a one-to-one conversation or my group can work on something. So we're shifting the balance so the teacher becomes a facilitator in those situations and could have said, I recognize that those 3 students didn't get the maths I was talking about, and I need to just give them a little mini lesson to be able to pull them back. It gives them the flexibility and the opportunity for them to take ownership. So there are fixed parts in the schedule, but there are times when the student can make choices depending on the goals that they have to meet. But just very quickly, we want it to be built around an ethical compass and a real understanding of learning. So, coming to a close. So to create a fully personalized, goal-driven blended, we need to find opportunities like workshops where they can work independently. We need to make the learning transparent for them to do this, but they do need to have the fund and knowledge to make that happen. And through time, they need to develop these independent skills to be able to move those forward. In other words, strong metacognition. This is our global network. And here's the little video clip at the bottom for you to look at later. But basically, this is just mapping where we are in Sweden and the UK. So in the center is the sort of Kunskapsskolan run events, which are free schools or private schools. And then around the side, we have those that are KED inspired, who make their own learning journey that we coach and support to make the journey that they happen to wish. So I'm pausing now to hand over to Marcel for some questions. I've rushed through that. I wanted to say that we run a wide range of study visits over a period of time, and no amount of me talking to you about this can give you a full impression of this. We have a study visit coming to the UK and to Sweden shortly, and I know David Penberg is sending some of his colleagues along, so you'll have my email and details. So if anyone wants to take any of this further forward, please let me know.
Thank